My goal for 2018 is to see a further decline. We had a 7% decline last year in actual prescriptions of opioids. We think doctors are just prescribing too many. We're just prescribing too many. Sometimes you just need to take 2 Bufferin or something and go to bed. But not these pills become so addictive. And the DEA said that a huge percentage of the heroin addiction starts with prescriptions. That may be an exaggerated number. They had it as high as 80%. We think a lot of this is starting with marijuana and other drugs too, but we'll see what the facts show. But we need to reduce the prescription abuse and hopefully reduce the addiction that's out there.
How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Ronald Regan, and today we got to talk about what you just saw from Jeff Sessions. People are really triggered about this. They're incensed. A lot of comments have come from a lot of different people, chronic pain sufferers, is that, and a third. But before we get into that, I just need to kind of put it in context and frame it. I'm not quite sure what the exact event was, but I suppose it was for or by the Heritage Foundation. I saw their name on a separate repeat behind him, but it was in Tampa, Florida. And what Jeff Sessions said was really true. It was really on point. And I don't understand why there's so much kickback as to, first of all, the truth of what he said, and also just his opinion about what people should do rather than being so dependent upon the opioids. Let's be clear. Right now in the USA, we do have an opioid crisis. Oh, yes. It's affecting the entire USA, not just poor white people. It's affecting everybody from all walks of life, all colors, everybody in the United States. We are on too many drugs, prescription drugs, and that's causing the opioid crisis from other illegitimate, so-called illegitimate opioids like fentanyl and heroin, because it starts with the pills.
Steve Williams, mayor of the city of Huntington, West Virginia. Most of the heroin addiction that we have began with individuals who had a prescription with pain medication, and that prescription led to an addiction.
Let's be clear, there is a direct correlation between an uptick in the prescription of opioids and the opioid dependence. The big pharma people, the companies, the doctors, or whoever are involved, they are responsible for the uptick in opioid dependence. Without the overprescription of these opioids, there would not be such a high demand for them. And the deaths are being caused by the demand for stronger versions of opioids. Okay. So if you think that your pills aren't enough or they become too expensive, then you go to heroin. If heroin is not enough anymore, you're not getting the same kind of euphoria. Maybe you're starting to get sick, even though you're using heroin, which is to prevent you from getting sick. Then you may switch to fentanyl, which is like, I don't know how many times stronger, but much stronger than heroin. But at the end of the day, all these drugs, your Oxycontin, Vicodin, all these drugs, heroin, fentanyl, they're all opiates. They're all basically the same thing, just varying degrees of expense and strength. That's pretty much what it is. Now, some got offended at what he said, talking about, take a Bufferin, which is basically an aspirin, and go to bed. But what he said was right, because look, the chronic pain sufferers, I understand your plight. If you got hit by a bus, you got shot in the war, I get it. You're going to need very strong pain medication to do with what you got going on. I get it. But the chronic pain people are not the majority of those that are prescribed opiate derivatives. That's just the reality of it. It's a lot of fraud going on. It's a lot of pill mills happening. I placed an article on the screen before you of a town in West Virginia that only has maybe about 1,000 people, 5,000 people, not very many people. And they got like 20.2 million pills in the period between 2008 and 2013. Why so many pills to one place? Well, a lot of it is because that location, me being from West Virginia originally, I know where this is. If you go up one road to your west, you go to Huntington. Huntington is the epicenter of the opioid crisis right now because it's right there in Ohio. It's a prime location, unfortunately, for the opioid crisis to really manifest itself. You're in the poor area. It's a mess. And then if you go to your east and north, west and north to Huntington, east and north to Charleston, West Virginia, that's my birthplace. I've seen a lot of people on opiates there. And then I don't even want to talk about the methamphetamine. That's a whole different ball of wax. So I'll talk about that a little bit later. But to stay on heroin and the pill mills that's going on, not only in the U.S. do you have pill mills, you have doctors that have gone to jail. Remember that doctor that got dragged off the plane? I think it was United Airlines. It was the Asian guy. He was bleeding from his nose, mouth, or whatever. It was a big mess. He got locked up, or he at least got his license revoked or something for basically being the pill mill. It's a lot of that type of stuff going on because there's so much money that's in it. You got kickbacks doctors get for prescribing certain drugs, recommending certain drugs, and then on television you have opiate derivatives that are advertised. That's something that's unique to America, if I'm not mistaken, because overseas they really don't do that, especially in Europe. People in UK, they've talked to me before and say, hey, it's kind of weird that you guys have prescription drug commercials on television, just regular cable TV. You're watching local news, all of a sudden, Relaxidol or some stuff comes on TV, and then they tell you all the side effects could cause brain damage, death, paralysis, but take this and it might help with your asthma, it might help with your fever or whatever. And that's the whole point. We are giving too many drugs for too many small things, all kind of mood enhancers, mood stabilizers, everything for everything. And what it ends up doing is it causes more problems than it actually fixes. And then for the problems, there are other drugs that are prescribed for that. Okay, you got anxiety, here's your Ativan. Okay, you can't sleep, here's something for that. Okay, you can't eat, here's something for that. Okay, you got pain in your back, here's something for that. Okay, you not motivated enough, can't focus, here's some Adderall, take that. And then people at a certain point understanding these pharmaceutical drugs are no more than just designer drugs coming from big companies that's legal. And they understand that the key component or the active ingredient in it are available in other drugs that are cheaper. That's when they go to the street. I can't find some Adderall, let me do some meth. Let me do some cocaine. If I can't find some some Vicodin, Percocet, whatever, let me go shoot some heroin. Let me go snort whatever, some fentanyl. That's what happens. That's how the opioid crisis is fueled by the pharmaceutical industry. Jeff Sessions said what needed to be said. Really, people want to criticize him, but I think people should praise him and salute him for standing up to Big Pharma, because Big Pharma is a very powerful lobby. They don't want him to say stuff like that because they make so much money off of their drugs. I don't even want to talk about the prices of the drugs, like my man Martin Shkreli. Shout out to him. Taking certain drugs people really need, like for HIV or whatever, and making the price sky high. That's a different issue because that only can happen with the insurance companies being complicit. And then we know about the insurance companies, how corrupt they are. Do you know that your tax penalty that you were getting charged, which no longer getting charged for anymore, for Obamacare was going to the insurance companies to help subsidize people that were on it, that were costing a lot of money? So you were paying this penalty to the government. Well, not paying it directly. You would have it basically garnished from your tax return by the government to go to the insurance companies, which then would prescribe everybody all these kind of drugs to keep them hooked so they can keep getting more money. So they're using the federal government to steal money from you, and they're making you sick and your whole country become dependent upon drugs. It's a whole big money scheme. So I don't see why anybody's really hating on what the guy says. The chronic pain sufferers, I understand, but you guys are not the majority of those who get prescribed these drugs. That's just not what's going on. And I'm not a fan of marijuana either. Like you said in the piece, talking about marijuana, how it starts. Marijuana is a gateway drug. People don't really understand how gateway drugs operate. It's not just because you smoke weed, you're going to absolutely become a junkie on other drugs. That's not really how it goes. The way it happens is you smoke weed and it's like a harmless drug, allegedly. You get a sense of euphoria from that drug. So now you're comfortable with using drugs to get a sense of euphoria outside of just regular everyday activity. So with that in mind, if you have some kind of trauma in your life, some kind of personal issue, some kind of whatever's going on that you're dealing with, you may just say, hey, I'm gonna just smoke weed to feel good like I normally do. But then if you start to get into depression or whatever it is, rather than just dealing with it in a normal way, which is, going through a grieving process or however you're going to do with it outside of drugs, you turn to harder drugs to dampen your feelings of sadness, to dampen your depression. And that's how drug addiction happens, because you were already preconditioned in your mind to look at this substance as a thing that can help you feel better, that can help you cope, that you are comfortable using. So it's not a stretch to go from smoking weed to putting a little bit of cocaine on your weed, or to smoking a different substance, maybe an opiate derivative if you could smoke that. Then you might get into a point where you're really desperate, you're really down, then you might start to inject. It's the same reason why the big pharma companies cause the opiate crisis, because they get their patients comfortable with using this substance to quiet the pain, to deal with whatever they got going on, and they get euphoria. So then they say, okay, if I can get the same euphoria, the same feeling, the same pain dampening from this heroin, I'm going to do that because I need it right now. And then, of course, we all know that when you are on heroin and you become addicted, when you try to take yourself off, it doesn't matter if it's pills from the doctor, if it's fentanyl on the street, heroin on the street, whatever. When you try to get off, you suffer severe withdrawals, you become sick. So to prevent from coming sick, you may go through desperate things. You may start shooting heroin. Then you have situations like Washington State, Philadelphia, Ohio, other heroin junkie centrals pop up. And I'm going to say this. Who wants to live next to a junkie house? Who wants to live next to the crack house, a dope house, whatever you want to call it? And when I say crack house, dope house, I don't mean where the drug is manufactured necessarily. I mean where the drugs are consumed. Okay, there's always going to be some kind of place where people congregate and they use drugs. And if you know anything about dope fiends, dope boys, they attract the worst kind of humanity. You're talking about child molesters, you're talking about all kind of people. Now, I'm not saying everybody that uses drugs happens to be that, but when you're talking about these drug dens, abandoned homes, no plumbing, they're the filthiest of the filthiest places, and they attract the worst kind of people on earth. So who wants to live next door to that? I've lived in an area where it was a washing drugs. That's not somewhere you really want to be. We got out of there when I was young, and because what happened was they tore down a project, and a lot of those project people came to our apartment complex, which was before not really that bad, but they brought all the drugs, all the violence, all the animalistic behavior with them. Who wants to live next to that? Some people have to live next to that because not everybody has money. People fall on hard times, and it is what it is. You got to be there for the moment. But then when you say, okay, legalize all drugs, then these places are going to just be allowed to run rampant. And if you say legalize all drugs, do you think that fentanyl should be available at your local CVS? How about heroin? How about Rohypnol? How about any kind of drug that causes euphoria? Anything, should that just be available at the local CVS? No prescription, no nothing, just go in there and get it? I mean, I don't understand. Even alcohol has some kind of regulation on it, and nobody says that that's bad to have alcohol be regulated. Yes, there is no prohibition nationwide, but yes, there is also a thing called dry counties where you cannot buy alcohol. Yes, there is a thing called you can't in certain places get alcohol after a certain time, or certain kinds of alcohol. It's age restricted. You can't drink while you're driving. So there's all kind of regulations on alcohol. It's not totally legal. So do you want to have drugs be like that, or do you want it to be totally just you could do whatever you want, put it into your body because it doesn't hurt anybody? And this whole thing about I could put whatever I want into my body, okay, that's fine, but you're looking at it in a very nearsighted way. Look at it on the long game. Do you want people that are on drugs, crazy out of their mind, to play right next to where your daughter sleeps at? When I say play, I mean, get geeked up, whatever you want to call it. Do you want that to happen? Do you want to take your little boy or girl to the playground, and then they ride down the slide, they hop off the slide, and then they almost land like on a vertically placed needle with their foot? I mean, you got HIV, all that kind of stuff going on. There was an HIV outbreak in Indiana. I don't see anybody really talking about that, where it was like almost 200 people got HIV due to needle sharing, prescription drug called Opana. Nobody talks about that, but that's going on all over the country. My uncle died as a result of intravenous drug use, and it was heroin. He died of HIV. So I seen it firsthand. I dealt with it firsthand. I've seen people on drugs. I've seen the long-term effects of drugs, how it tears down a city. Small towns are being decimated by drugs. I don't understand why anybody would be against what Jeff Sessions said. Like I said, as I close through this time, chronic pain people, I feel you, I hear you, but you are not the majority of those that get these drugs over prescriptions. Drugs being overprescribed simply means that there are too many drugs out there, first of all, and they get prescribed too much, and nobody could tell me that's false. If you think that it's false, what I'm saying, if I'm off base here, if we should just make all drugs legal, let little kids go buy Rohypnol, fentanyl, or whatever, if we should just do that, then please explain to me your reasoning for that. Or do you think I'm correct that a society that's awash in drugs is going to be a dangerous one? It will not be productive, and it's easily malleable from the outside. Let's be clear, a lot of the drugs are coming from China, and they pretty much put whatever they want into their drugs. I've seen them produce fake cabbage, fake milk. So you don't think they're going to have fake drugs as well? I mean, this kind of stuff could start a zombie outbreak. I'm not even really playing, because all these chemical combinations, I mean, it's just too much. I saw an overdose of 22 people in Brooklyn, New York off of K2, the synthetic marijuana. Some would say if you legalize weed, nobody would use synthetic marijuana. Well, alcohol is legal, so why does anybody do any other drug? It doesn't make any sense, but I could talk about this forever. I'm going to end it right here, and whatever your comments are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.